the same page. And it hasn't been always the easiest thing because we are a passionate community and we have a lot of diverse pieces to our community. But we want development and we want to see tax base grow. We want to have good schools, and we're all on the same page about those things. And that's what we've done together. And I will have conversations from time to time about people will say, oh, Marshall's opposed to development. I said, you need to come watch the city council, and you need to come watch the planning commission, and you need to come watch the zoning board of appeals. We are supporting development. We're doing things like the fiber net. We're doing things that are making things happen right now. So we're very excited to be here. I'm also saying I'm finishing up my 2-year term as chair of MEDA. So I'll be done on June 30th. So I've had an absolute blast in my 2 years of doing this. And Karen Drenth didn't make it here. She's going to be the chair on July 1st. So I look forward to what she's got in the works going forward. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our CEO, Scott Foley.
Good evening, council members and city manager. I mentioned the city manager because I've been working with Tom off and on, and also Jack on a lot of projects. Every time I bring up something, sometimes they roll their eyes, but there's a lot of activity going on. We're getting different companies coming in, different prospects. When I mentioned prospects, and then I mentioned leads. Leads are people that are just, kind of kicking the tires, talking about, Marshall looks good. But prospects are ones that actually come here and they're actually talking about laying money on the table. They're asking for incentives. They're actually looking at property and coming very close to landing a deal. And so those are the ones that are the prospects. I don't on subsequent pages I'll put the leads, but it's mostly the prospects that I'm looking at, and I think that we're really taking off on a lot of different ventures here. As far as the Dreamers building, we're looking at that. We're looking at, of course, the marijuana growers and processors. We've been working with them, and things are coming together. I think once the spring hits, we're going to see a lot of construction, and there's going to be a lot of activity going on with new build-outs and companies coming in and out. So I think this is going to be some activity we haven't seen before. And that also brings in new leads and ventures into the community as well. Both Tom and I have been working on Vector Pipeline. They want to put a metering station. They're investing $1.7 million in putting a metering station that'll help out the new MEC plant. And also it's going to help out another company we have in there, which is Project Blue, which is liquid gas to liquid compound. They make kind of a compounds that last for about 29 days, then they deteriorate, and they're not real hard chemicals. They're coating for some of the Dart cups that you drink and other consumers products. So we're looking for them to come in. That's another $78 million investment that's coming in. Also on the hotels, when I talked to the hotels, they're called the Abro Brothers, and they looked at the hotels coming in and asked what was going on in Marshall at the time, and I told them, I said, we got this great plan coming in. I did the sales pitch, and they bought it. That's why we got a $40 million venture going on. They're putting in $40 million with the hotels and 60 employees, and that's moving along with planning, and I think that's you're going to see something happen this spring here. And then we have other projects that are going out there. Another company that's looking, we're getting some logistics companies. Logistics companies are ones that we really want to hear. They don't take up a lot of electricity, but they produce a lot of jobs. And it's not, shuffling equipment from, to the truck and to the forklift, but there's a lot of prepping that goes on in logistics companies nowadays. They actually prepare things. You can talk to different companies that are out there nowadays, like Michelin Tire. They prep tires for Harley-Davidson bikes. So you're going to see a lot more logistics companies that are doing some assembling and not just moving equipment back and forth. So those are the type of companies I'm looking at bringing in here that'll help our tax base out. They usually build large buildings. Over in, when we're talking about a lot of other things are going on with the chamber, we got a top-notch chamber going. When I started here, I was walking up and down the street, and I saw that not everyone has iPhones. People like paper, so we try to do both iPhones and paper. So we're doing technology and paper to all the guests that are coming in downtown. We're creating an environment that people are wanting to be downtown. We're saying, we're visiting them all the time. It's on a daily basis. Gene will go out and visit 4 or 5 people. So retention is a big part of economic development. You always have to have retention to keep your customer here, and that's what we also do in the park. We go out and do retention to different customers and tell them about different types of product lines, different types of programs that are out there to help their business grow. So we're doing that. We're also doing a lot of tourism, counting buses, which we never did before, and finding out who these people are and trying to bring them back in. We're also engaging with other tourist areas, just not the Turkeyville, but looking out at Jackson has where they do a prison tour, and other areas that do types of tours. We're trying to group up with those type of people and bring in more tourism into the area, so we do have a solid downtown and a viable downtown to visit. And so those are the kind of things that we're doing. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I was going to show, a lot of you have seen the video before, but it has numbers, it has a lot of things that I probably missed, and I'm going to play the video right now, and hopefully it goes putting the plan here.
Open the lens door, Scott.
Can you dim the lights?
Kristen, can you hit the lights, please?
Stop it. Hit escape. Hit escape. Stop.
There we go.
That video also helps us with recruitment. And so I've been sending it out to a lot of different foreign companies, and people are saying, well, what's Marshall like? And that depicts the Marshall and its whole and all the different things that are going on. And it makes it a real good recruitment video to tell people, here's what we're doing, here's what's going on, here's the investment, and here's the people at Marshall, and that really helps out people making up their minds coming here. So that with a lot of the other folks that are involved here, and people ask me about, the Senator Noss asked me, well, how do you like Marshall? Because I was comparing, we used to work in Jackson together, and I said, Jackson, no one was involved. Marshall, everybody's involved. So it really helps out when everybody wants to help out. And from Tom, Jack have been the greatest supporters, and I thank them. So thank everybody.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
One more thing. So when you sit back down and start thinking of the things, first of all, stop downtown this week and say hello to our new bookseller, right? So the Mitten Word, we're going to have a bookstore in the Golden Block. The other thing is that we met, so one of the really important things we did last year was to actually expand the membership of MEDA. So we called it the Marshall Area Economic Alliance because we thought that would be a cool name, but it was really just the city. So we expanded, changed the bylaws, and expanded it to add a Marshall Township. Actually, it was a representative of a township with a Master 425 agreement with the city of Marshall, of which there's only one, although Marengo, everybody that surrounds it could easily do the same thing. So we added Marshall Township to the board, and Jeff Albaugh was the appointee that Marshall Township recommended. But why that's important is in Marshall Township is, and there was a picture of it there, is the biggest single undeveloped site in the state of Michigan for a mega project. So we met with Mike Knopfs last week, and Dave Maturin had the CEO of MEDC sitting next to me. I didn't ask for his autograph, but I thought or didn't do a selfie. That's what I should have done. But MEDC is working with us to allow us to buy options on that property, to start to assemble that property together. We are, putting the pieces together to make that project happen, and I think that's really important because, again, that property can't be developed without the city, and that's really where the growth of the city is going to happen over the next 10 years in that area. So I'm really looking forward to that relationship with Marshall Township, and they've been really good partners, and they're going to be good partners going forward. So I won't say anything else. Thank you again for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, I think I'm going to say a little bit more. Every time I see that video, Scott, I see something I didn't see before, and it's a great video to be showing prospects who would want to look at Marshall. But I would think if they've never been to Marshall and they see that video, they must envision a much bigger city than what we have here, because we have so many things going on that they must think this just stretches for miles and miles and miles. Yeah, and so kudos to you and your team and the whole staff that's downstairs. They all do a great job. They're all focused on, their own individual things, but they all encompass the bigger vision. And I get to work with them quite often, and everyone needs to understand, how valuable that team is down there. So thank you for that. The relationship we do have with the surrounding townships, even though we only have Marshall Township that's sitting on the board with us, we're still in conversations with Fredonia and Eckford and stuff like that. And the collectiveness that we have going on right now between the city of Marshall and all of the townships that are surrounding us is greater than it's ever been, and at least in the 26 years I've been here. We're getting called to meetings on a weekly basis now where people are saying, hey, we've got this person that's coming to town and we want them to meet all of you. And, let's sit down at the table and talk about why couldn't we do this and who's going to need to be at the table when these conversations happen. And those are happening on a weekly basis. And so, again, it's an effort by many, many different people. Sometimes we can all be there, sometimes we can't, but we all have the greater vision for the area of Marshall, and it's working, and that's why we're seeing all of the results. 890 million and 300 jobs is incredible for any city. So for us to be able to say this is going on, and on top of that, there's 5, 10, and 15 other projects ahead of us that we're just starting to talk about. So again, thank you for presenting to us tonight. We encourage you to come back as often as you'd like and share the good news of Marshall. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, next on the agenda then is going to be moving into the event reports. The first one being the 51st Green Family Reunion. That'll be item 11A. And Kristen, are you going to help us with those tonight?
Sure she is.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
The Green family contacted me. I believe Mrs. Green is from, or the daughter of the family is from somewhere down south. They've had their family reunions in the Marshall area for 50-plus years. They originally used to have them at Ketchum Park, so they contacted me because they wanted to kind of move back to Ketchum Park as she remembers from her childhood. So they were just requesting to use the event. I can't remember exactly the date. I don't have it printed here.
Sunday, August 5th, from 12 till 10.
She's well aware that she doesn't have any claim to a pavilion, so being the case, she's intending to possibly rent a tent if the weather's going to be inclement. She will take care of cleaning the park up, all of that, but she's really excited to come to Ketchum Park and have her family reunion. She's expecting 50 to 70 family members.
That'll be Ketchum Park, Sunday, August 5th, from noon until 10 p.m.
She's aware that the park will be open to everybody else. She doesn't have any heartburn about that either. Just really wanted to get back to Ketchum Park for their family.
That's nice.
So where do you think, if they were to actually bring in that tent table and chairs, where do you think that's going to be placed? In the north park or on the south park?
More than likely back down by Kids Kingdom, somewhere near the other pavilions, on the south side of the park. The other part tends to be on the wetter side. And I'm assuming they'll have kids there, so it'd be good proximity to Kids Kingdom. It's really hard to say if somebody's going to be staking out the pavilion on a Sunday morning. It's kind of hit or miss. So she knows when she came to visit last time, there was a reunion going on in one of the pavilions. So she's just making provisions in case it's taken.
Sure. Good idea. Okay. Any questions for Kristen on that one? 11B then is the Oilers Incredible Bed Race, of which you have a sheet that was dropped off just before the meeting. I'm sitting on your site from Kathleen, who couldn't be here this evening, but wanted to make sure you saw the results of last year's report.
Yeah, this is the second time they're holding this event. It's kind of neat. It's held on Spruce Street between Kalamazoo and Eagle Street. They get involved. They have side games. The road is blocked off. Well, we won't allow parking on Spruce Street after 2 a.m. That morning through the event. So it's done with barricades. Patrol will stop by, just stop and check on the event, make sure everything's going okay. It's just static. It's closed between there and there, and she is going to make contact with the residents and property owners prior to the event. It went well last year, no problems whatsoever. So, funds are going to the community foundation from the event. Last year they raised about $2,000.
Yeah, for a first-year event, that's pretty good. It's a short amount of time. I mean, it's really only 3 or 4 hours that the activities are going on, but there's a lot of fun or a lot of excitement that's happening. And I don't think last year a lot of people really understood what to expect, but now that they've seen that, it could be even a bigger event this year.
Yeah, I stopped down there myself. It was pretty neat.
Yeah.
Good crowd.
Good. Nick, did you have a comment?
Great event.
Yep. All right, so that's going to be on Spruce Street out in front of Oilers, July 21st from 10 until 2 p.m. And I'm sure you're going to start seeing some literatures for sign up and all that sort of stuff coming out soon to get more people involved. So the next event then is going to be the 35th annual Oaklawn Hospitality Classic and Health Fair for 2018.
All right. Richard is here as well, and he might want to have a few words, but this is the 35th annual event. This takes place on May 19th. We'll start closing down the road about 7 a.m. That's where they're set up. And they're also doing the health fair, which is in the center part of the circle. So it's a pretty neat event. They have a lot of participants and vendors there donating their time and just sharing, some of the health tips that are going on. It is a 10K, a 5K, and a 1 mile fun run walk involving the kids. It's also pretty neat to watch them. Takes a lot of manpower to do this event because it is such a large and it's very well attended. I mean, thousands of runners coming into town plus spectators. So between the police and fire department, we do manage and we do get some help through the CERT, Community Emergency Response Team. They do help out as well. So event that's gone on since I've been here. We have it down pat. Oaklawn's very, very good at setting everything up on time. They'll have their tents ahead of time as well. Runs pretty smooth at this point. We do have an MDOT permit, and Michigan Avenue. We will have an MDOT permit. It is on their list. It's one that we do every year. So we anticipate not a problem. So we'll get through that.
So those roads close at 7 a.m. and Richard, is the first race at 8?
I think so. Last year I was texting the chief saying, can we close it now? Can we close it now? It's extremely well organized and have a very able assistant that does a good job organizing everything. I can't tell you the exact.
It does bring a lot of, it's like 1,500 runners, correct? I mean, it's a lot of people. 900?
It varies
Okay.
between kind of that range and 1,200 depending on the weather. But
Yeah.
very well attended, have a number of spectators. It's a good downtown event. Again, I think we're one of the only ones that actually has a permanently marked course around the city. And the city and the county patched all the roads before the last year. So thanks Tom for making sure that happened, and the county as well. But it's just it's a fun event. And I need to make sure that the mayor gives me permission to put tents. Don't hit the sprinkler system, right? That's right.
That's right.
I'm sure that happened one time in the past, so everybody remembers that. But again, we appreciate your support on this.
Very good. So Saturday, May 19th, starting at 7 a.m. and it lasts most of the day until 3. But the health fair is another great addition to that. The last couple of years, that's grown and been better, and it's a lot of great information. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Item 12A then is our personnel policy manual amendments. And Tracy, do you want to start that, or do we just want to have Lee?
If Lee doesn't mind.
Okay. We'll have an overview then of what we're looking at. The recommendation is that City Council would approve the changes to the personnel policy manual. We did have a work session earlier on this that we were able to dive into and digest the changes that we were going to be making. And Lee, if you would just like to approach the podium and just give us a brief overview of that.
Thank you. As we talked about during our work session, the proposed changes would be to add certain categories to your list of protected classes in both your EEO and your harassment discrimination policies. That would be to add sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression to that list. And I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has as to why it's my recommendation that you add those classes. But that's basically the overview of the changes there. Some minor changes to your complaint procedure just to make sure employees have access to any member of management or HR or their supervisor to make complaints if necessary.
And we'll be looking at making those changes to both policies this evening, correct?
Right.
Any questions or further comments after our work session tonight?
I do appreciate your help with that
Sure.
policy. Thank you.
It was very well done, and it made it very easy for us to be able to quickly make those decisions and look at that and know what we were looking at. So I appreciate that as well. Okay, then the personnel policy manual that we're looking looking or being recommended and that we would approve the changes to the personnel policy and the discrimination policy. I would look for a motion.
So moved. Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 12B then is our compost fees. Kristen will help us with that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At our meeting in January, when we were discussing budgets, the compost site and charging, and potentially for charging at the compost site was one of the items that we had on that PowerPoint presentation, and one that the council said they were interested in exploring. To that end, several of us on the staff got together to discuss different options and possibilities for charging at the compost site, what would make the most sense so that our seasonal employee out there doesn't have a whole lot of work or handle a bunch of money. We pulled together some statistics. Last year they did some counts, and we average about 600 visits to the site per month, which is about 4,200 visits over the 7-month period of time. We did not get a count as to how many of those were unique or individual different users, because people could multiple times go to the compost site. We're estimating 200 to 300 people in the city use that site. We may have a better idea if we were to do this compost punch card, because then obviously we know who's buying the cards, so we would know how many unique users we have. So to that end, we propose doing a punch card. The punch card will be $20 per card, essentially $2 per visit. We will, if it doesn't get used in a year, it can carry over to the next year. I guess if you want to share it with your neighbor, you're more than welcome to do so. However, if you show up to the site, you have to have an ID that says you're a Marshall resident. So people in the city can't buy them and then give them to people out in the township. We still do have size or space limitations within the compost site. We did talk a little bit about letting contractors pay to get in, but again, our processing and size limitations still are restricting that. Same thing with township. We did talk about it a little bit, but don't feel we have the size yet. It's going to take us a couple years of processing this compost before it can start going away. So we have to store and compost what we had and then bring in more. So it takes a little while for that turnaround to start happening. What Tom passed out is a copy of what we kind of came together, be about a business card size on business card type cardstock. It can be punched out at the site. We will emboss it when they purchase it, so it'll have a raised emboss, so it can't be counterfeited. And that's really about it. We're expecting it, I mean, we're making some estimates that this, on our $32,000 budget, that this may bring in about $7,500.
I have some questions, Kristen. The punch cards, you tell us a little bit about it here. You say you can come to City Hall, you can mail a check, you're on a limited basis, they'll be available at the site. It seems to me it's tedious to go get a card. I don't want to have to come here every time I need something. So why can't you get them all the time at the site?
Well, I don't want to say they will be out there, because we have a seasonal employee handling money on a Saturday out there.
Right.
I don't really want to expound upon the things that can happen with that money.
Well, I know it could happen.
But we're going to start off.
20 cards, he's got times that much, he's accountable. I mean, that's pretty easy to.
Yes, you'd like to believe that would happen that way, yes. We talked about that at length, which is why I was not a proponent of having any money or any cards out there, but we will have them. I say on a limited basis because I don't want to say that we will do it all season long.
Okay, and my next question is, the site that we had to leave, which was county-owned, correct?
Correct.
Did we ever propose, and I know this is in hindsight, but perhaps to be revisited because we don't have much space, that renting that space back or being able to use that space on our own, since it's much larger than what we...
There was issues with that site as far as the new standards for its proximity to some bodies of water that were going to require us to do some mitigation measures so that the water wasn't running into those bodies of water, which was when we started looking at those rules and regulations in the letter we got from the DEQ And the money situation, that's what kind of made us start looking at our compost site to move there, because of the stuff we would have to do to capture all the water that falls on the compost is quite expensive. And we would have had to do that to capture that from going into the bodies of water. Our site at the compost site is graded such that it flows away from the river. There's no way for the water to make it into the river.
Okay. So assuming that site's not going to last forever, obviously, because it's a small site, do we have any plans at looking at future sites, or?
We don't need to. We're expanding it slowly as we're able. But once we start turning over compost and compost starts going away, we will start regaining more space. Because we don't keep the compost, we start using it, we start selling it, and then more space will become available.
So are we thinking more space as in more space acreage, or just more space because it's composting?
Well, more space because it's composting, and then once it gets to finished composting status, we can then sell it and get rid of it, and it moves out. So the finished material will go away, and new material will take its place.
Okay,
So you end up kind of doing...
the footprint's not going to get bigger, correct?
Right.
It'll just keep rotating.
Right.
But you're not looking at the ability to handle, say, township residents or
Right.
commercial.
We are not at this time.
I think that that's one more thing. One of the big things, and I know it's a huge deal with a lot of people, is that they do use those lawn care services. And they are struggling with what are they supposed to do with all of the clippings. And I feel for them, because they have a job like anybody else, but they have no means, even if they pay for it, to discard the waste. So I don't know. It's something, I mean, we just kind of dropped that, but I think it should be discussed, and we just need to help them somehow.
Well, if you remember, we had a few of the contractors here at the meeting. They basically, I'm not sure where they took their materials, but they have taken it somewhere else, and we've had no contractors showing up after that. So they have found a location, and nobody has talked to me that they can't find a place to dump their compost there. It's going somewhere.
That's exactly right. Going somewhere, but.
Kristen, how many, you said you didn't have direct numbers or actual numbers, but your guess was in the 200s, you said?
200 to 300 unique users.
And if we're talking $20 a card, and we're anticipating 7,500, that's 375 discrete users.
Well, they could buy multiple cards.
I'm just wondering how we came up with the 7,500. It seems a little high.
What we did is we looked at the, what is it I'm looking for right here? We looked at the 4,200 visits because it's $2 per visit. We feel that some, as it is, when you put a fee or you raise a fee, you're going to lose some. So we went from 8,400 to 4,200 times $2, which would have been $8,400. And we figured, okay, we're going to lose, and that's where the 7,500. You know, some people may use it 30 times, some may use it 10 times, and then they can just get a new card when
I guess my only comments are, user fees are a fair and equitable way of dealing with things, because clearly, if we're only getting 200-300 discrete users out of our total population, that's a small percentage, so user fees make sense. On the other hand, we like to make it clear to folks that when you live in the city and you pay the city property taxes, there are benefits you get. And I don't know if $7,500 in projected income is worth the negative publicity that we're going to see from it. I don't know that it's worth us giving up something where we can say you have a city-provided compost center. I'm struggling with that. But I do like the idea of user fees, where the user pays, and if you don't use it, you don't pay. But it is one of the city services we've provided for a long time, and maybe unfortunately, because of our budget crunch that we've continued to have year after year, it's one of those ones that's going to have to go away. But I'm troubled by it.
And I just have one more question. I do agree with Brent on what he said. if you have that punch card, but you only really know you're gonna use that one time, can you not just buy a one-time stop at the compost?
We don't really, no, we don't have the
Because then you're
ability to
just
do
doing
that.
like $18.
Well, or you go in with partnership with a neighborhood resident that's also a resident of the city. We will look at the card and an ID. And if the ID it matches the person and they're within the city, doesn't matter to me who bought the card. So if you and your neighbor decide, hey, let's go in partnership on a card, use it whenever, till it's gone, that's
You
fully
know, I wonder, and
possible.
I hate to have the council get into actual details. We should be looking at policy. But I wonder if we aren't being a little too clever here. And maybe, we're only talking $2-3 a visit. And of course, we want to be accountable with the money. We could come up with some kind of a steel tube like you see at the state parks, and you show them your driver's license, throw your $2 in, and it's locked up, and, you know, somebody is designated to go pick up the cash once a week or something.
I would highly recommend against that. I think, this is a process that, somebody could use the card over a couple of years. We don't want to put the person at the gate, responsible for taking $2 here, $2 there, because you can't account. But when the person goes out for a Saturday, has 20 cards, and if he sells them all, he's going to have $400 coming back. So there's a real balance counting system there. Or if he sells 10 cards, he'll have $200 and 10 cards left over. It's very simple, and we've had trouble in the past where we've had the compost center charging for things, and you have to put your total trust in. Not that we don't trust our employees, but again, it just puts a temptation that we would prefer not to put our employees in. And so I just, and just to reflect, I mean, we are trying to find ways to make these budgets work. There's many things that we had mentioned about revenue sources. This was one of the few that was acceptable to you. And so you're going to be seeing your budget here in a couple of weeks. We're looking at ways. I mean, and this is a small one. I use the compost center. Sometimes make 2 trips on a Saturday, depending on what my wife has planned this year. And but I feel probably, there's only 1 or 2 of my neighbors who also go to the compost centers. They don't.
It's a small number.
And that's why this 200 or 300 individual. I see, a lot of times it's the same people on Saturdays if you go out there.
I'm thinking as a similar situation, the downtown parking permits. And we started out with very low fees, and then we realized after a year's experience that, there's administrative costs involved, and we had to substantially raise those fees. You've apparently factored in whatever you think the administrative burden will be to create these cards, to sell them, to whatever. I mean,
These are really simple because to sell and to monitor. That's why, and I'm not going to tell you that 2 years from now, administration could come back and say, really, it should be $30. I'm just picking a number. But again, we have to look at some of those unique services that not all the community uses. And we need to find some revenue sources, or we start cutting services again. I mean, last year we cut 8 positions. We hope not to do that, but we're going to balance the budget. And we're not looking at revenue sources. There was many other ones that we gave, and no one seemed like they wanted to do anything. We felt this was one that you still had on your table.
I like the idea of it being $20 for a card, whether that's 5 punches, 10 punches, whatever. I like the $20 increment because I think, a lot of times people have a $20 bill, or in this case, they would be able to write a check. I think we have to be very cautious on what we would have our employee doing who's out there by themselves on a Saturday. The people driving in know they're there by themselves. I'm really not in favor at all of there being any sale out there whatsoever. Or should we take a check from somebody out there? I mean, you're asking that person to be a cashier, and the person driving in who may have ill intent doesn't know if they've sold 2 of those cards or 200 of those cards today. And I think that I'm a little concerned with that being there. I understand what Brent's saying about the accessibility of getting them, but I think we have to think through that process and figure out where those are going to be sold. And I'm just really concerned about having somebody out there by themselves for 4 or 5 hours and having a cash box. It doesn't matter what's in the cash box. I also like if I'm going to use it, I should be willing to pay for it. You know, I go to the compost yard a lot. I probably will pack my car a little bit tighter, to go in instead of making 4 trips out there on a Saturday and get 3 trips out of it or whatever. But that's okay. But I don't, I think the other thing is, you can say, well, this is one of those services then that, we're going to charge all citizens for, and then, we find out that, again, 200 or 300 of them use it. And I think you'll find that because those 600 visits, again, I'm going 3 or 4 times, Tom's going 3 or 4 times in there on a Saturday. So you're going to find it's not anywhere close to 600 people. Yeah, it's much, much smaller. But I want to have some place to put it, unless we're going to have it picked up curbside, then, I want to have some place to take it, and we need to. And it is unfortunate that we can't look at that other site or something like that to have a larger space, but, then you're going to have more man hours of taking care of it and that sort of stuff as well. So you got to look at the bigger picture. I like the punch card idea. I like the $20 increments, regardless if that's $2 a visit and it's 10 or it's $4 a visit for 5. So I kind of like that. I'm just concerned about having it sold out in the middle of the field. I think we just, coming from a financial background, we look to not to put our employees in situations. And a lot of times people who are messing around, they don't really know, again, whether there's $2,000 or $2 in that box. They just know that there's a box of money there. And so I think we need to rethink that. And I think whoever the employee is, and I understand that person isn't selected for the season yet, but whoever that employee is, I think would really respect us for not putting them in that position.
One thing that we talked about, you heard Kristen really not liking to take money out there. City Hall is open 8 to 5. Probably 40% of our people that live here in town don't work in town. They're coming back, they're leaving before 8, they're coming back after 5. And so if they need to go to the compost center, I mean, that's very difficult. We've heard this before from citizens about our hours, and so again, they can send a check in, but we felt that this would be the most convenient for our citizens. The first couple weeks, we'll probably sell more, and probably in the fall. That's typically when you have your biggest travel.
So when you say purchased at City Hall, is that during regular business hours and
Correct.
on Saturdays?
We're not open on Saturdays.
And people are working out of town?
That's what he's saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Is that you're not going to sell them at City Hall 8 to 5 Monday through Friday.
Tomato.
It just seems like, if we don't do a good job of getting the word out about this, someone's going to have their car packed up on a Saturday, and then there's going to be no way for them to purchase this in order to dump their.
A lot of people will.
That would make me very upset.
Yeah.
Get it back out.
Right. So I just see there being some problems there, and I know we're trying to find these spots where we need to fill in, with our budget, but for the amount that we potentially are making, is this going to be worth that, and the hassle that our people are going to have to go through, and the aggravation maybe if they're not aware of this happening.
Do we need to make that decision tonight? We're going to have a budget meeting coming up.
We do. The compost site is opening in the 19th of April, I believe. So we need to, one, get the publicity out about this, mailers out, and get the cards printed. We had to come to this meeting to make all that start to happen.
I know that we have asked every department to evaluate their budgets and find ways that we can be more cost-effective. I know that this is a result of that and a result of the unfortunate situation with the county. I do think, unfortunately, though, when the reality of how it's going to work operationally shows up in front of us, I have a hard time thinking that this would be successful for the city, successful for the residents, and for the employee. At best, the employee is dealing with really frustrated people all summer who show up. They're going to get 2 or 3 a day, I would expect. Show up, don't have the card, have to turn them away. That's the employee sitting there that's going to have to turn them away. Or we put them in the unfortunate situation of having to deal with cash out there, and I don't think I'm comfortable with them sitting out in a pretty secluded area in some little hut handling cash and checks. So as much as I want to figure out how we get to a healthy budget situation with all of our options on the table, knowing that we have to make a decision, I don't think I can support a punch card now.
John, can you come up to the mic, please, because we're live.
John, Mr. Fleming said that his Welcome Center is open on Saturdays, and he would be happy to volunteer them. Saturdays and Sundays, to help purchase them there.
I was just thinking, if the cash is an issue, what if a citizen showed up at the Compo Center, signed in, we gave him a card, we take that sign-in sheet, go ahead and go back to finance on Monday morning and invoice them?
That wouldn't bother me.
That help?
Certainly reduces the issue with cash. Does it create so much administration?
Well, we wouldn't take the cash. They would get like a free
No,
card.
right.
But when they showed up, they would.
But then you're going to have to issue an invoice to them and
We
send
will
it
then
out, right?
invoice them
And then get a,
Kind of like a provisional ballot when you're voting.
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, with Scott's offer with the visitor center being open, I'd been thinking, well, gee, Felport takes payments for everything else, all the other utilities and everything else, maybe we could wheedle them into helping us, but that'd probably involve some kind of a 20-page legal agreement that we'd have to pay somebody $7,000 to draft for us. But yeah, if the visitor center could do that simply, my concern is that we're going to get ourselves, this process is just going to become an administrative nightmare, and it's not going to be worth it for the $7,500. But that, I think, is a real, that could work.
Well, because you're going to sell them on Saturday.
Right. And if John is comfortable with, hopefully it wouldn't be very many then, but a few people who show up, and of course the better job we do advertising, the few people would show up not knowing. If he's comfortable with just a quick invoice or something, if he's comfortable with that and it doesn't going to create a huge administrative burden, that might be
We have
nice.
handling cash all the time, we have Marshall box and going selling various items, so.
You can handle it fine. If John's comfortable with the rest of it, that eases a lot of my discomfort.
Scott, what are your weekend hours in the summertime?
Summertime, they're a lot longer, I think it's from 8 to 4.
Yeah, so if we're open 9 to 3, that would be prior to and after what our hours would be.
That's a great,
So, I load up my vehicle, I know I gotta come here before I go out there, or, I come here at 8 o'clock and then go load my vehicle and I'm out there at 10:15 or something. I love that idea a lot better than us, because, it's not only just about the few $20 bills or checks that person's gonna take out there. You're gonna have to have change. You're gonna have those people who are gonna come up with a $50 bill, because that's all they had in their wallet. So it is more than, we sold 3 cards at $20 today. And so I don't think we should have any sale of cards out there. I'm concerned about the administrative paperwork cost and man hours that would come with invoicing.
I think you're initially going to have to do the invoicing idea, because if somebody pulls up there and learns for the first time, they don't read the paper or they're not watching this on YouTube, they're going to show up there, and if our person there is going to say, oh, by the way, you need to go to City Hall, I think that's going to upset people. I think we have to give the opportunity, if John's willing for your staff to do that invoice. It is costly every time you send an invoice out and you're collecting it, but if you don't want money out on site, then I think we have to have both available.
I don't think we would advertise that, but we would do it in the field. I also think that it's going to, much like when we switched over to this site, we did enough advertising that we only had a few complaints the first couple weeks and then they went away. So, I mean, I just really do think it's going to be only the first couple weeks as people kick off the season. Then they're going to have a card. They're going to know how to get a card. And I don't really have any heartburn about them mailing in a check saying, hey, can you mail me a card?
Right.
We can very easily do that. So,
The other thing we were talking about doing is, depending on what you did tonight, is putting a stuffer in the utility bill about compost center, opens on such and such day, the hours, and new this year, a punch card system, and then even though it's going out mid-cycle, we would do it so that we cover all our billing cycles. So any person who pays a utility bill is going to be getting this flyer.
Is that something that if they're invoiced, that we can't invoice on the utility bill? Rather than invoicing a separate bill for that?
I think it'd be difficult because if you're a homeowner, you're okay, but if you're a rental, say you're the landlord, and all your renters pay, I mean, I think it could get difficult. And then also the staff downstairs, again, if you can let us, John, work out the invoicing,
Well, yeah,
let us
and I was
do
going to say,
that.
hopefully that's the minority, not the majority.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're right, you're going to have this onslaught of sales of cards now, and then it's going to be quiet for a couple weeks because people are going to be using those 10 punches.
If you're okay not collecting on site, having Meta sell these and allowing us to figure out the invoicing, let us move forward. And if you want, first of all, to
if
charge.
you want to charge,
If
right?
you don't want to charge, make that decision, and
We'll go forth.
yeah. So we'll figure out the cash flow.
And I don't think I would specify that Meta would sell them on the weekends, just that you can purchase one at Meta. If I'm in the Welcome Center on Tuesday and I have to get my card for the weekend.
Well, I think we will put them in both the financial bill paying and Meta.
Right,
I mean,
right.
we'll just have
But
them in
I'm
both
saying,
places.
they
right?
could, just like Marshall Bucks, you can get them any day of the week if you're in there. So I just don't want to get too narrow-minded to think that on the weekends you can buy them at Meta. That would be a nightmare for Scott's staff. Well, I don't have a problem with charging the $2 per visit or the $20 per punch cards and stuff. My personal opinion was I just didn't want there to be collection out there for our employees. If there's other opinions, please share them.
Well, it's certainly a reasonable fee.
Right,
I mean,
right.
if it's costing us $32,000 a year to run the service, and we're only hoping to gather 7,500, we're clearly well within the realm of what we should be doing for user fees, so that's easily defensible.
Well, and I'll clearly be happy to spend $20 to have the service, versus saying, well, we can't afford the $32,000, so the service goes away. I think we saw that when the county closed their site, and we had a lot of people saying, where do we go with this then? Because if you're not going to take it, then it's going behind my garage, and then it's my neighbor's problem, and, so that would be my recommendation, is that we let the finance department figure out the invoicing and take Meta's offer up on that and try to move forward with it.
And we'll keep you informed if you decide to go that route.
You looking for a motion?
Yeah, I need a motion.
I'll move,
I'll support.
with the caveats that we talked about.
Right. So we'll take a voice vote on that, please.
I said I'll support.
Right.
So the motion on the table is that we would go ahead and take the staff's recommendation to approve the method of the punch cards at $20 a punch card being sold at Meta and/or being invoiced from the site, Meta and City Hall.
You want roll call vote?
Are you just going to ask for a vote?
Well, I was kind of thinking it would be money invested, but we can just do a roll call vote then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Okay, next on the agenda would be item 12D, which is the labor contracts for the FiberNet project Phase 3.
Mayor, council members, it's another report for the FiberNet project, and coincidentally, a year ago today, the council approved the engineering, design, construction, and implementation of the project. And from that point, just a little bit, we went through the staffing, we went through the engineering, design, construction of Phase 1, which is the backbone around the city, construction of Phase 2, which is in the northeast part of the city. A lot of materials the council approved to be purchased for the whole project. And in my opinion, I mean, we've always had some, some startup issues, but I think it's worked real well, and we are starting to connect residential customers in the northeast part of the city. Several commercial customers are on currently, and we did have a beta customer, but that was the city itself last October. And we're kind of fortunate we did it that way, because we did have some problems with connecting to Merit, which they quickly corrected for us to give us a good full 10 gigabits of service on our system. But what's for you tonight, again, with Phase 1 being complete, Phase 2 being about 90% complete, we'd now like to commence on the downtown area, and that's what we're calling Phase 3. And it's really, even though there's a lot of critical customers down there, it's going to be a pretty straightforward build, in my opinion. There's existing ductwork on both the north alley and the south alley. Got to pull fiber through it, so it's not. And we already have that in stock. And we're going to install 2 of the what we call nodes or the cabinets. One will be at this facility. One will be in the parking deck to serve the north alley. South alley will be served out of here. So they won't be out in the alley itself that we originally were thinking. We did a little reconsideration just because of that. And then Tom mentioned also we got the mail issue with new mailboxes going in those spots. So I'm glad it worked out that way. And so the labor component to install the underground, we're estimating around $20,000 for a contractor, and we'd like to single source that and waive the city's purchasing policy. And then there's an overhead portion with the associated with the downtown area, and we'd single source that to another group for $24,112.75. And there's a contingency on each of those, and that will expected construction or in-service date will be early to mid-June for the downtown area.
Okay. Any questions for Ed or comments?
Ed, so with the expected service date, will that be when you're expecting to start being able to hook up people in our downtown area?
Let's see, I got to go back into this because it'll be 29 days for construction. If we start next week, there'll be a lot of customers hooked up by then already. I'd like to have them, everybody that wants it, completed by that, but it might stretch into a little bit beyond that. But
sure,
I think we'll definitely be earlier than that when we'll start actually connecting customers. The pulling fiber will pretty quick.
Right. Do you feel that the staff that we have in place now will be able to keep up with that demand to get people hooked up in that time frame?
Yes, of course, we've hired 2 technicians, full-time technicians, and we also have acquired the services of Matt Parks, who's also going to be doing a lot of the interior work for us. So, we'll have 3 people actually running or doing that. But we also got to be a little cognizant, and we'll look at this, that we just that we don't delay any of the other customers out in those areas that we've already committed to in the overhead area, out in the northeast portion of town.
Right.
But we got good month and a half now to get that kind of going well, and then they'll start downtown.
My only concerns are just that, this is a big process and it's taking some time, but, if we move around to the other parts of town, like the northwest area, that could be another year before we have people hooked up. Is that correct?
No, we plan on constructing that this fall, and we'll be hooking customers up there this fall, and it does slow down in the winter, but if we can get those services run, the rest of it, a lot of it's interior work, or just running from the outside inside the house, so wherever the customer would like their router positioned.
I guess what I'm just thinking is that, if we have all of our, infrastructure in place, we just need, more people to get these hooked up to residences, would it make sense for us to hire a contractor to expedite this process? Because I feel like maybe we're starting to lose a little bit, we lose opportunities the longer that it takes with, other companies taking, contracts and customers, and I just don't want there to be an issue with that.
That can be accomplished. It would definitely put us over budget on the project.
Okay.
And that's the reason we kind of hired those two technicians early, because the original CBA, we were going to install services with contractors, and they got to be real pricey. It's a lot pricier than having internal labor do it.
Can those technicians work alone in an area? Like, can we take 2 out of the 3 downtown and leave 1 still working out of the
Basically, and we'll have to see what the volume is in each of those areas, because once we make the commitment, as everybody knows, we want to live up to that commitment. It's our customer service is critical right off the bat.
A couple of questions. The article was in the Advisor, quoting our supervisor there, referenced April of 2019. Is that everything wrapped up, everything completed? Because that was discouraging.
Pardon me?
That was discouraging.
Well, remember the CBA, and that's what we're striving to the cost-benefit analysis. CBA is what said it was going to be a 2-year rollout, and we basically have everything passed. We're still going to have customers, I think, hooking up after that. Mm-hmm. But this initial 700 or 800, 900 that we have on tap right now, we'll definitely have done by that. And the goal is to really be at 1,438 customers about a year from now.
My second question, I guess, is we've looked in our cost-benefit analysis what the cost is and a rollout schedule. As was mentioned, we're losing revenue from people who aren't signing up, plus we're losing people to other providers who are in here trying to get people signed up under contracts, all these people who weren't interested in doing it for us in the first place. But have we since gone back and looked at the lost revenue and compared to that to the additional cost of hiring some contract crews?
We have not yet. That was going to be, we want to see what, this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Mm-hmm. About once a month, we redo the CBA to reflect what's been approved by the council and what we think is attainable.
I guess from my perspective personally, and I think the others can weigh in, but from my perspective, I'm sensing a lot of angst in our public having to wait. They want this thing in, and they wanted it here yesterday. I'm thinking it is worth a fair amount of money up front if we need to hire some crews to get this thing going. Talking about having over to the northwest side, and I'm assuming that means our final phase, the northwest side, by this fall. That sounds real good. If we can do that without hiring other people, I guess I'm comfortable with that. If we can't, given especially since the northwest is all underground, or primarily underground, and then once the ground freezes up, then we have to wait until spring. I would rather spend some money up front, get that additional revenue coming in. To me, that seems to be money well spent. That makes sense to get this thing going.
So we would probably have to do a cost analysis of that to say if we brought in 2 more, what is that going to initially cost up front, but what in the end is it going to be? If it saves us from losing, 12 or 15% of the people that we thought we were going to have. Do we have any idea right now, Ed, how many people who were interested that we've tried to give the service to have chosen not to take the service?
Around 95% of when we call them there. Yeah, come hook me up.
So we're losing about 5%.
About 5%.
Early on.
But
as it gets longer, that will grow.
They might have just signed up and things changed their life, and you don't know what caused the, The only concern I have about that, and we discussed this when we brought on the 2 technicians, was we're going to have contractors working in people's houses. It gives me a little bit of concern on their customer service, because between Matt Parks and our 2 technicians, they're going to be, they are customer oriented. When they walk in, they'll put on booties, they'll be very polite. And usually when you get contractors that do this type of work, they come in overalls and boots, and it's going to be, I think, I can try to find if we find those type of people. Now there are some people, we might be able to hire some temporary people that are right now on furlough from AT&T for a period of time. I think there's a group out there that would like to do this work. That's where our two technicians, one of them came from AT&T and one come from WOW. They're very familiar with customer service. All the AT&T employees are also, so we picked the right ones that would work with the customers, and they're used to doing that. They've been in a lot of the houses in the community already.
Right.
So we could explore that. It'd be a temporary job though, because we couldn't afford them for years.
Right.
Well, no, we're certainly not, we're not talking about permanent employees. No, that's the beauty of contractors. That's a valid concern, that the customer service is there. I guess it goes into the category of you get what you pay for. The low bid may not be the best bid, but it just seems to me that we're losing goodwill every day that this goes on, that we have the bulk of the city still not being wired. That may be because of unrealistic expectations too, but the reality is we're losing goodwill, and there's a value to that. So,
Well, let us analyze this, and we'll get back with you, and we can, I don't want to make any false expectations today because we haven't really analyzed, but give us a little time here.
this council member, maybe the others could chime in, this council member would like to see everybody that can reasonably be hooked up before the ground freezes up this fall. So
That is not that's not what the CBA exhibited. It was a 2-year construction rollout to those customers.
I'm looking at the reality and what I'm hearing from our residents today, and if we could do it by this fall, I think that we would gain a tremendous amount of goodwill. Now, if it comes back and it's gonna cost us $500,000.
Right, that's why we have to look at that.
That's
You know, I
where
mean,
we
we
need
can
to know
certainly
that.
look at doing that. That was never what was promised. But we can look at that and we can
Certainly.
say, well, if that's what you want to do, we can do that at this expense. And then we have to determine whether or not it's cost effective. To say today we want everyone signed up, well, yeah, we all want everyone signed up. I want it to start next Monday too, but that just may not be feasible. And I'm not afraid to spend a little bit more money now, in the end, but we need to know what that amount is.
Now, again, it's within the cost-benefit analysis, it's pretty straightforward to accelerate the customer hookups and then offset that with a expense of a contractor or a temporary employee expense. It doesn't take long to do that. We'll run those numbers.
I would like to posit a question followed by kind of an explanation, but basically, how many people signed up on Facebook, like when that whole thing was going out? Would you be interested? About?
Well, we went on Facebook, we've advertised, we sent flyers out, there's a total of about 900.
900. So, have we done anything to reach out to, we have emails, we have phone numbers, have we done anything to reach out to those people who have signed up? Because, like, I was right there, one of the first to sign up, and I couldn't tell you when I could expect to get hooked up. I have relatives who live in town who ask me all the time. They were so excited when a box went on their house. My sister was basically doing a dance in her living room. But I say that because even as a council member, having signed up, I have no idea when my house, is that in the fall? Is that in 2019? I have no clue. Is there a way we can reach out to these people and let them know, hey, your zone is coming live about here? I understand it's a 2-year rollout, but I think some communication to the people who signed up a year ago would be beneficial.
We can do that. That's one of the reasons we hired the administrative assistant, although we put a lot of other additional duties on it with all the materials. We got to make sure there's just a lot of things that we put on her, but that was the original intent to bring that person on, and we can certainly do that. Again, communication is important.
Any other questions or comments?
I just have one. Ed, if you go out onto the site where you signed up in the first place, if you have, you've changed your mind or you have additional information or other information, Is that updatable on that site?
I believe it is. But I'll have to verify that.
Okay.
I do think communication is important, like Robert was saying, because I know, and I spoke to you before the meeting, WOW's increasing their rates, and you can get out of that by signing a 12-month contract. So we may see that variable increase with the people who said, yeah, I'm interested, but if it's not going to be until next fall, you might as well sign that 12-month contract, and then if it winds up being this fall, they're going to get hit with fees to cancel WOW to switch to FiberNet. So that might be something to consider too as we're looking at moving forward.
That's exactly what I was
Because I had this
thinking.
conversation with my husband in the last
But I
2
want to know how
weeks
you got
that no,
12,
don't
I
sign
got
a contract.
24. You must be a better negotiator.
Well, my husband must be. I'll give you his number.
Because I got 24 months,
I
not
don't
12.
do those things.
Wow, okay, we'll see you in 2019, 2020. Okay. Any other comments then?
On this specific request, I think it's fine. We should just proceed with Aspen.
Okay. So it's recommended by the FiberNet staff that the city council approve the expediting of the construction of FiberNet Phase 3 and waive the city's competitive bid policy by retaining Aspen Wireless Incorporated on a lump sum basis not to exceed $20,000 plus the $2,000 contingency for the installation of the fiber optic cable in an existing duct system in Challenger Technologies LLC on a lump sum basis not to exceed $24,112.75 plus a 10% contingency of $2,400 for the installation of the aerial fiber optic cable and associated splicing. Seek a motion.
Support.
Lots of support. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay, Tom, I think you're going to help us with this next one. Item 12E then is we've added the Michigan Liquor Control Commission outdoor service area for 101 West Michigan Avenue.
This is the Cronin Building, Grand River Brewing. This is their LLC, Veritas Vineyard. And this is a one-time requirement when they file for their Liquor Control Commission. It's an outdoor service area. And they got this, I think, to us today. Oh, there's Scott. Yeah, so we're bringing it to you to speed this along. We're not sure if we're going to have an April 2nd meeting or not. We thought we need to add this and help them out to move forward with their project.
So what we're adopting tonight is just the resolution of showing of support that as a municipality we would allow that, and that helps them.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions on that or comments? Okay, then I would seek a motion to approve.
So moved. Support.
And then, so we have support. So I would say anyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, so looking now at public comment on non-agenda items. If there was anything that was not on the agenda this evening that someone would like to address, please come forward, state your name and address. You have 5 minutes.
Is that a rolling 5 or a hard 5? Dennis Gorsline, 600 North Madison Street. Forgive me if this touches partly on one of your agenda items. I didn't realize all in depth you were going to go with the FiberNet project. I think Mr. Rice would probably agree that I'm in the top 5, if not one of the top 2 vocal people as they've been moving forward with this project. I appreciate his time in answering my emails. I also appreciate that Mr. Reen offered to meet me for coffee. And 2.5 hours later, when we were done talking, we had covered quite a lot of issues. Want to touch on 1 or 2 things that Mr. Rice said. One is his concern about contractors and how they would operate within the house. I cannot speak highly enough of the 2 people that came to install. They stopped at the door and put their booties on every time in. They said please and thank you. They asked what they could do where I wanted it. They did everything except bring me coffee. So I appreciate that. I appreciate how complete Mr. Reen was with his information that he shared and how willing he was to meet with me. But the one thing I wanted to share to make public rather than just speak to one of you after, and I believe Mr. Mayor Reed, I believe I sent this in an email to you after the work session on January 13th, and this was based on some numbers that Mr. Rice shared, which they may change as they start to get involved in this. He estimated that a crew of 2 people could do about 5 installs a day. I created a spreadsheet based on $40 revenue per customer, based on 22 work days a month, based on 5 installs a day. So at the end of month 1, you would have an average of 55 customers because you'd have 0 on day 1, 110 on day 30. 6-month revenue gain by having 2 additional people do 5 installs per day. 6-month revenue gain is $79,200. So stick that in the back of your head when you consider how much it's going to cost to hire additional people. And I understand there may be some trust issues, and there may be some. I don't think you can just go out, put up a sign, and have 10 people stand in line that are qualified. But when you're calculating the impact on the cost-benefit analysis, and I agree, I'm certain it will have some. I'm certain that hiring outside contractors for any length of time, whether it be 3 months or 9 months, will have an impact, but it will also be offset by the revenue coming in faster.
Okay. And how's the service been since you've been hooked up?
I decided to go with 250, and for a couple months, and I admitted to Mr. Reen that I was going to test it, and I was going to try it out. And it was as easy as asking someone else to flip on a light switch. It has been totally thoughtless, it has been totally flawless, and it has been consistently 240 to 250, which you're going to get that variance depending on who you ask to measure it, whose stopwatch you're using. The most impressive thing for me, being a heavy internet user, is the upload speed. My YouTube upload speed went from 9 minutes per clip to 24 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
And my ping time, which is the time it takes to find the website, went from 23 milliseconds to 1.
Wow. What did you have before?
What's that?
What did you have before?
Wow.
And all the rest of us.
Which I also want to add, not that the city can do anything about this, even though you do have a franchise that maybe you can put some pressure on them. WOW is being very, very, very poor stewards about canceling your service. When I called them to return my modem that they didn't ask for, they requested that I drive it to Detroit.
What?
Or pay them $50 to stop and pick it up. So I took the time to read from paragraph 16 of their terms and conditions to them that says I have to return it in any reasonable method, and I did not consider driving to Detroit to be reasonable. So they decided I can mail it to them.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
Kathy Miller, 540,000 pounds. And actually, I let Dennis go first because he's all the facts and figures and the great spreadsheet. I was doing them on my phone. And I didn't know the internet was going to be on there, but I was coming up to tell you the 2 technicians that came to our house, immediately coming in the house, first of all, our dog was barking, but they put their booties on, and they were the friendliest things. And it took a little bit longer because I have a mess in my basement, and we were all going to take them down there. And then they came up, and we had a couple of hiccups, but they talked to us. They enjoy working for the city, by the way. The one from AT&T has 3 or 4 kids. He's a hunter. They live out in the country. They love Marshall. And the other, they're here for their lifetime, I swear. But they are very professional, very nice. And I hope that if we do hire more, that we do the same thing and maybe get them from AT&T, because these guys are nothing but professional. And it's nice to know that Dennis figured out, I didn't know it was 5. I had him down 8 a day. But anyhow, and I know Brent's right when he's talking about other people wanting service, but we really like ours. The other thing is, Tom, I'm not mad at you. I'm here to tell you thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve on the Board of Review. It was a pleasure. It was a learning experience. Julie is absolutely marvelous. It's too bad she's retiring. We had a good session, 3 days. Wasn't too boring. We had people come in. They were very reasonable. They brought everything in they needed. So I'm not mad at you, and I'm happy to do it again.
Good, you're signed up.
We do have another opening out there if anybody out there. Yes.
Any other public comment on non-agenda items? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move on to council and manager communications. Councilmember Williams.
Nothing for me.
Last week at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, the ZBA approved a sign height variance for Folk Oil, the Citgo car wash on the corner of Fountain and Michigan Avenue. We'll be raising that sign by 13 feet in order to allow motorists to more clearly be able to see down Michigan Avenue. So that's been kind of an issue, and they're planning on taking care of that right away to avoid any upcoming incidents. So also, Green Eden requested a rear lot setback on their property, changing it from 25 feet to 3 feet to the property line. Because of the type of property that they have and the pipeline that goes through the back end of their property, it was granted. They're not able to build a large enough facility without having that setback closer to the back of the property. So
That's the one on Division?
yes, the property on Division. That's everything from me. We do have a YPC event coming up this Saturday at East End Gallery. Starts at 7 o'clock. Some of the youngish people will be displaying their art, so it will be a great opportunity to get to see some of that and interact with that group. Thanks. Councilmember Metzger?
The only thing I have is we had a planning commission meeting and we set a public hearing for a potential grow facility in Marshall. That's coming up. It was a pretty short meeting.
Staff, anything?
Kathy mentioned about employees long-term. We have 4 employees who will be retiring in the next 10 to 15 days. Doug Leach has been with the city for 25 years, going to be retiring. Lynn Cook's been with the city 24 years. Joe Delapaz, 28 years. And Tim Clark, 18 years. 2 of those are linemen. Lynn's at the wastewater plant, and Joe is over on the water operations crew. So that's many years. It's we have 2 other employees who are going to be retiring later this year. Out of 80 employees, when you start losing 6 employees, and this is pretty close to 100 years of talent it affects. And so the electric department is very busy with the bridge project. And also, I just want to also, 2 of our line men went out to work, the Nor'easter worked out. Do they work in New Jersey or New York? New York. They were out there for almost 2 weeks helping out the East Coast electric crew. They 2 crews from Coldwater went, and then they caught up with crews going through Ohio to work as part of the AMP Ohio. So it takes them away from family, long hours, working in terrible conditions there. So we really do thank them for giving up time to help out another area of the country.
When they do that, do they take our trucks or do they get trucks out
No,
there?
they take our equipment.
So they have to drive that whole way?
Yeah.
And we're all reimbursed for that too.
Yes. Again, we've helped other municipals in the state. We also help Consumers Energy from time to time. And, we hope never that we have to use crews, but you never know what Mother Nature is going to do. And we have a good working relation. And a lot of people remember, those crews. And we, a couple years ago, we had Holland and Lansing, I believe Holland and Lansing and a few others here during a storm event. So, but yes, then we would reimburse those municipals.
Nothing tonight?
Regrettably, with some of my new work obligations, I haven't been able to make it back for the farmer's market meeting. Kathy said that she emailed me. I checked my email, but I don't see an email. So was there something I was supposed to bring up? Oh, okay. All right, I just want to make sure there wasn't something I was supposed to bring up this evening. Then nothing from me.
So a couple of things that I just want to bring to everyone's attention, and when Richard was here earlier, he kind of mentioned one of them. We had an outstanding opportunity this week that was presented to us to go to Lansing and talk with Senator Knopf, and Representative Maturin was there, and they each had their onslaught of staff with them as well. And the MEDC and all of those entities were interested in knowing what was happening in Marshall and what was going on and what they could do for us. We know that Marshall is on the governor's list for, the #1 property in the state of Michigan that he wants to promote and see utilized. And so we do get a little bit more attention in Lansing than what some others may be getting because of that property. But they truly were just interested in talking with Scott, and he's left the room as well by now. But to know what it is that we're doing and the results we're getting and how we're obtaining those and stuff. So I thought, Tom had asked me to go with them, and I thought it was a great meeting, and we all should know that, all of our legislators are looking at us and are proud of Marshall and what we're doing here. So that was an exciting opportunity the other day. The other thing that we had happening this afternoon, from 4 to 6 p.m., they had an open house on the apartments above Schroeder de Graw. There's 3 new upper flat apartments that are now available, and actually they're not available because they've been leased already, but they were available for a short period of time, but they were snapped up pretty quickly. But beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I'm sure those pictures will be out there for everyone to see. But it's just another example of some of the things that are happening. The Cronin apartments are now leased, and we have those apartments that are leased. So we continue to be able to add to our buildings downtown by renovating those upper apartments. And there's definitely a need. They had no problem leasing them out right away. So they're very pleased. We should be very pleased with them. We should be pleased with the staff and everyone that worked towards helping them with those grants and stuff that they had to do. It takes a lot of people to make those happen and keep them on track and make sure that the right people are signing and approving and inspecting and stuff like that. And but when it all comes together, it gets what we saw tonight, and it's beautiful. So watch for those pictures to be out there, and if you see any of the Schroeder de Graw gang that are there, make sure you mention to them that we appreciate what they've invested in our city. And that's all that I have for this evening. So we stand adjourned.
Your mics are still live, so.
I'll say what it feels like.
Your
It feels
lives
like
are still live.
Oh, okay. It feels like whatever was in my eye